bringing sports, entertainment, and technology podcasts together. This is SPNT.
You're listening to the Redleg Weekly Podcast. Audio bandwidth for the Redleg Weekly Podcast is provided by Stitcher.com. Download the Stitcher Smart Radio app today at Stitcher.com/SPNT. Oh, what a difference a week makes in the Queen City. The Reds. Ouch. Here we are a week ago thinking the Reds had it made, up 2-0 against the Giants, and then they come home. And how do I want to put this nicely? They lay an egg. Oh, might possibly have been the worst week in Queen City sports history. We're glad you could join us here for episode 29 of Redleg Weekly. I am your host, Nick Strubling. We got a lot to get to this week as we talk about what happened exactly last week at Great American Ballpark. And of course, we'll also look back at the rest of 2012 and talk about maybe some of our highlights and what we have to look forward to in 2013. I'm joined alongside my co-host Dave Rem each and every week. Dave, how you been, bud?
I'm doing a lot better today than I was a couple of days ago, but yeah, doing not too bad now. Kind of sit back and looking at the season.
It's you know, we did the show a week ago. We're sitting pretty up 2-0. You're thinking, wow, they just have to win one game, and really, I was stunned. I don't even know how to really accurately describe what just happened.
Yeah, and I mean, they hadn't lost 3 in a row at home all year, and they haven't lost 3 at home, and they've got momentum, they've got everything going into home, the playoff atmosphere, and after we lost the first one at home, I'm like, I don't know, we still got 2 chances. You didn't really expect us to – I didn't expect us to sweep. I mean, it would have been nice, but once they lost that 4th game, I'm not going to lie to you, I was scared as crap. So it's – I put it right up par. I don't know which one's worse because we were at home, but that Yankees-Boston series, I know that was more games, but they weren't all at home. We had 3 chances to win 1 game at home. And so it was tough to be at.
Yeah, and you know I went to Game 5 with our good friend Mickey. You went to all 3 home games there at Great American Ballpark, and you're thinking, okay, you're up 2-0, especially with the way they played out in San Francisco. Dave, they scored 9 runs in Game 2. They only gave up, I think, 3 hits total. It seemed in the first. I mean, it was a little more than 3 hits, but the Giants' offense was nowhere to be found. And then, you know, it seems like the cure for bad offense is to head to Cincinnati and play in that small ballpark.
Yeah, unless you're the Reds, and then that's what kills your offense because we loved playing in that huge ballpark out in San Francisco. And Bailey pitched a gem in the 3rd game. We just couldn't score the runs to back him up. And then pitching wasn't great in Game 4. And you get to Game 5, anything can happen. We could not let that get to a Game 5 because there's no such thing as any advantage once you get to a Game 5. At that point, our home field advantage was wiped out by the fact that they just won 2 in a row at our house. So going into Game 5, I was not confident at all. I was truly worried, and I hate to say it, but not even I wouldn't even say I was surprised when we lost Game 5.
No, you're right. The minute they tied the series at 2, the gloom and doom just really it set in, and you could feel it everywhere from the fans in the stadium to Twitter to your friends and family asking about the Reds, and you just knew there was no coming back from that. They're really and it's so bizarre because you're thinking, okay, Game 5, anything can happen, but after giving up a lead like that, it was almost like I don't know what the Reds could have done other than, you know, putting up a 5 spot in the 1st inning, Dave, to really, you know, just kind of get that momentum swing shifted back on the Reds side because it was gone and it was evident. It was evident from the first run the Giants scored in Game 5.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if the players got a little cocky and they're like, oh, we only got to win one of these, but you would have think that would have went away by Game 5, but we couldn't hit the ball. Game 4, Leak was in a tough spot. Leak should it. You can't really be that hard on Leak because let's be honest, nobody expected Leak to pitch in the postseason. So that Cueto injury killed us. The fact that Votto still couldn't use his back foot for power hurt us. So we got really lucky with injuries all season, and then they kind of just accumulated in the playoffs to take us down. So it's not the end of the world. We have a young team, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and it's not time to go crazy. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say those 3 games took a little something out of me to sit there and watch.
Yeah, they were very tough to watch, and as a Reds fan, you don't want to see it. And it's like I said it earlier. I don't know how to describe what happened. The pitching was what you wanted it to be, Dave. I mean, they pitched their tails off. They wasted a Game 3 performance out of Bailey that was spectacular. How you don't score more runs for him in that game is beyond me. And it was almost like, and I go back to this one play in Game 3, and I don't know if this was a sign of things to come, and maybe it was. Now you look back on it in hindsight, that there in the first inning, Brandon Phillips, he steals second on a wild pitch and got a little greedy and is thrown out by a mile at third base for the first out of Game 3. You go back and you look at that, they end up scoring 1 run in the inning, which ultimately would have been 2 had Phillips been on second base. So that's your winning run right there, Dave. Again, I don't know. That's not what lost the series, but it's small things like that just kind of added up, and the Reds never could recover.
When it comes down to that, I mean, yeah, hindsight looks terrible because it would have ended the game in regulation and won the series. But you have to look at that was the first inning of a game after we had just been hitting the ball all over the place in a much bigger park. In the first inning, you're willing to take risks like that. And, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have because the ball didn't really get as away as he thought. But I don't really blame Phillips for trying it there in the first inning, especially the way we were hitting the ball prior to that game.
Well, it cost him. I mean,
no, I know it cost him, but it was the first inning of a game, like I said, after we'd been hitting the ball all over the place. And I think he thought it got farther away from the catcher than it did. Well, that's the only explanation.
You know, that's the big cliche, right? You don't make the first out at third.
I know.
Again, it's not what cost them the series. There were plenty of opportunities.
There were so many things wrong.
But that play doesn't happen. We're talking about Reds playing the St. Louis Cardinals right now. Instead, we're watching the Giants and Cardinals, and we're sitting at home wondering what stick just hit us right in the face, you know? And, going into Game 5, you're going up against Matt Cain. The Reds have beaten him, 3 times that year? You're not going to beat him a 4th time. It's almost impossible for that to happen. And sure enough, Matt Cain pitched a hell of a game. Latos battled, but 1 inning just really it ultimately doomed the Reds, and it was Buster freaking Posey with the grand slam. And that wasn't even close. That thing was a bomb. I was there. You were there. That thing was a no-doubter.
And we're not blame Dusty, guys. Let's get that out first. Right. But I could tell Latos had no business being on that mound, bases loaded to Buster Posey. This is the one thing Latos needs to work in this offseason. He gets so angry when he doesn't get a call his way, and it really messes with his head. He needs to kind of get that under control. But you could tell, I mean, those bases were loaded, and when Posey came up, I'm like, this isn't going to be good. Because he's not in the right mindset right now. Dusty probably I don't know if this is a hindsight thing because I kind of thought it when it happened. I don't know why you didn't bring somebody else in and face Posey there. Latos just he wasn't in the right mindset to face him there.
I agree. I thought about it during the game as well. And you could tell he was getting he was animated and upset at the Cozart error as well. Again, you're right. Hindsight is 20/20, but let's play that game, Dave, because you could argue that Latos probably should have started Game 4. I would have never thrown Mike Leake out there. I wouldn't have. He showed you nothing down the stretch to warrant a postseason start. I would rather have gone with Latos in Game 4 and Arroyo in Game 5. I know hindsight's 20/20, but I mean, hey.
That's another thing. I don't think that's a hindsight. I think most people agree with that because, yeah, Latos would have been on short rest, but I would rather have a short rest Latos and then a short rest Arroyo, then Leak coming off having pitched a game in 10 days at least, probably more, and then Latos. You don't even give Arroyo, who pitched a gem earlier in the series, you don't even give him a chance to pitch. I would much rather have short rest studs than Leak healthy, with all due respect to Leak. And I was a Leak guy, and up until late in the season, I thought him and Bailey were right kind of neck and neck as the same kind of pitcher, but Bailey obviously took off. But Leak had no business being on that mound, and you almost can't blame him, because he obviously wasn't in the mindset that he was going to be pitching this postseason. He kind of just got thrown out there. Nobody knew until, 2 hours, 3 hours before the game that he was even pitching. So, right. I mean, he probably knew a little bit before that, but why would you not at least try Latos and Arroyo on short rest?
Yeah, I agree. It's just it's one of those things where, again, I know we keep saying that word hindsight, but so frustrating. So frustrating. That was a series you had won, and I would have just gone with what got you there. And I know Mike Leake, he was a first-round pick. He has shown flashes of brilliance, but this year he didn't really have it. And you could argue that he really hasn't had it ever since his incident off the field. But that's for another show, I guess. I would much rather have gone with Latos, a guy who, was your best second. Well, you could argue at times he was your number one starter for most of the year when Cueto was kind of stuck in neutral there toward down the stretch run. And you're right. With Arroyo, you know what you're going to get out of him as well. We don't know why they made the decisions that they made. They made them. Now we're sitting home and just kind of wondering, okay, what do we do about 2013? Which we will talk about here in just a bit. But before we do that, we do have some news. Dusty Baker signs a new 2-year contract extension today. He'll be the manager through 2014, Dave. What do you make of the Reds' move there?
We talked about this a little earlier in the season, and how at this point I wasn't shocked they did it. And he took us to the playoffs 2 out of 3 years. Granted, not the showings you'd like to have in the playoffs, but he took us to the playoffs nonetheless, which is something that's way more consistent than anybody else. And we've got a young team, and I think consistency is a good thing. So I'm all for it. I think I was pretty sure if he was a manager this year, it would be with the Reds. The only thing I thought he might retire due to health reasons, but I think he sees the potential in this team for the next couple of years, and he wants to be at the helm when they do what they're capable of.
I think it's a good move, only because I don't know who's out there right now that's available or that would be a candidate. There's been talk, potentially David Bell, who's your manager down at AAA. Maybe that's somebody that they're grooming for the future, because he has moved up the ranks pretty well in the Red system. But other than that, I thought of maybe potentially could they lure Tony La Russa here, but I don't know how that would work. And there's an interesting dynamic between Reds fans and Tony La Russa. Not a whole lot of people like him, but he's a damn good manager. So I guess when you look at all things considered, Dusty Baker's still one of the winningest managers in Major League Baseball history. He's one of 3 Reds managers in club history to take 2 different teams to the postseason. You can't argue with that, Dave. I mean, he's probably the right guy for the job. Now everybody's going to argue with his in-game managerial decisions and stuff of that nature, but from a team standpoint, he seems to get the best out of his players.
And the players love him. I mean, you got to look at that. That is a factor. You want your guys playing for a guy they respect. And he got us – well, we question his decisions because some of them don't make any sense. He got us 97 wins. We were tied for the most wins in baseball. You can't – like you said, you can't argue with that. We had 99 if you include the playoffs. Granted, if we could have got to 100, they're a nice big jump. But – yes, we haven't had the showings in the playoffs you like, but we're in the playoffs, which is something you couldn't say prior to Dusty Baker showing up.
No, you're right. Again, he has brought success with him to Cincinnati. Other than the health scare there here late in 2012, Reds, like you said, they finished with they actually were one game behind the Nationals for best record in baseball. Nationals had 98 wins, Reds had 97. So either way, it's still you had 97 wins and had a chance at going to the National League Championship Series. But I think it's a good move, and continuity is good, especially for a Reds franchise that really, if you look at it over the last 10 or so years, is a position that really hasn't had a whole lot of continuity in the Reds organization. So Dusty Baker coming back for another 2 years. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So why don't you email us at podcast@redlegfans.com, or you can also give us a follow on Twitter at Redleg Weekly. All right, Dave, let's do something that we haven't done in a very, very long time. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
It's called...
And now it's time for the Redleg Weekly poll question.
Something we haven't done, like I said, in a really long time. This week we ask, who is your 2012 team MVP? So make sure you log on to redlegfans.com and vote. Dave, who do you got?
I got to go with Jay Bruce. I mean, he was streaky, obviously. That's what Jay Bruce is, but led the team in runs, home runs, second in doubles. He struck out a good amount, but still less than Drew Stubbs, so that's not saying much. Everybody strikes out less than Drew Stubbs. He was third in steals, which is something you probably wouldn't have expected at the beginning of the season, so I think it's got to be him. Even streaky, his stats at the end of the year give him that honor.
Right now I've got, in the poll question, we've got Jay Bruce, like you said, who had a fantastic year. Where would this team be without Ryan Ludwig? That's another question you got to ask. We know what Johnny Cueto did, 19 wins on the year. Was so close to getting win number 20. Aroldis Chapman filling in, he was not the closer to begin the year, was in the bullpen as a setup man. Ended up one of the league leaders in saves. And then I have Brandon Phillips, but I'm going to take that out, Dave, because I think we need to put Todd Frazier in there. When Joey Votto went out, everybody was wondering what was going to happen. And Todd Frazier, for all accounts, he acquitted himself very well this year. For a long time, he was the leader for the Rookie of the Year award. Unfortunately, he kind of faded off in September. Wasn't getting the amount of playing time down the stretch because of Rolen and Votto being back, so that kind of hindered his chances as well. But you could argue that without him, where would this club be here in 2012 as well? So I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna add Todd Frazier. Actually, I'll just add Todd Frazier. And if you want to vote for Brandon Phillips, well, I guess you're more than welcome to. But my vote, I'm gonna go with Jay Bruce because when you hit 34 home runs, almost had 100 RBIs, 99 RBIs on the year, that's a pretty solid season. And it's tough to argue with his selection for team MVP. So if you want to vote, log on to redlegfans.com and place your vote. All right, Dave, let's have a little fun. I know we had a rough week last week with the Reds obviously kind of choking away the opportunity to go to the NLCS, but I went back to episode number 4, Dave. Do you remember episode 4 at all?
I was wondering if you went back to those. Are those the predictions?
Yes, I went back
that you destroyed me on
episode 4, and we had a little fun. We did our preseason predictions, and we went down the list. We went with who would have the most wins, who would have the most home runs, stolen bases, saves, who would get more starts in left field, who would get more starts at catcher, how many wins would the Reds have, and we even had you predict the playoff spots in the National League, Dave. And who ended up having
it was bad.
It wasn't as bad as you would think. Like I said, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So for most wins, you predicted that Matt Latos would have more wins, the most wins on the club. I predicted Johnny Cueto, so there's one for me. For home runs, you guessed Joey Votto.
I don't know. I was thinking about it. I have no idea what I was thinking when I said that. Like, looking back, I'm like, of course it was Jay Bruce.
Yeah, Votto, you picked Votto. I had Bruce. Now, you got me here because for stolen bases, you picked Stubbs, and I picked Phillips. Stubbs with 30 stolen bases on the year. Phillips only with 15. For saves, this was kind of a funny one because you picked Arredondo, and I picked Sean Marshall. Neither one of us were close there.
No.
More starts in left field. Who do you think had more?
Ludwig had to have had more starts, and I know I picked Heisey.
You picked Heisey, I picked Heisey, and the correct answer, you're right, is Ludwig. 107 starts in left field. Heisey with only 36.
Well, and he deserved every one of those starts. So.
Absolutely. Who would have more games caught at catcher, Hannigan or Mesoraco?
I hope I guessed Hannigan.
You picked Mesoraco.
Really? Jeez.
But here's the best part. You ready, Dave? I'm here to cheer you up.
High 90s. I'll go with 90.
Let's try that again. At this point, we're wondering how many wins would the Reds have this year? And this is what Dave said.
High 90s. I'll go with 97.
Wow. See, you're a really optimistic guy.
There's something about this year. I don't know. I mean, it's all the stuff they did the offseason, even losing Matson. I mean, I think they'll figure out the bullpen situation, and the division. It's still, don't get me wrong, the Cardinals are still decent. I mean, the Cardinals are still good. Decent seems rude, and the Brewers are still a decent team, but the division's gotten worse. They've gotten better. I think it's a recipe for a division win.
There you go, Dave. Hey, congratulations! You hit it right on the head. 97 wins.
Couldn't we have skipped right to that? Because that made me sound a lot smarter than the picks. 97
wins. That was I was doing the show production tonight and was going through those, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty impressive. You should go buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah, I wish it worked that way.
Still 97 wins. I predicted 87. So you got me there, big time.
Yeah. And they did figure out the bullpen. I think we can all agree to that.
That is true. Yes, we can agree to that. As far as the National League playoff race, this is what you went with. You said that the Phillies would win the East and that the Miami Marlins would win a wild card. You had Cincinnati winning the division. You had Arizona winning the NL West and the Los Angeles Dodgers with the last wild card spot.
Yeah, but I got the wins right on the button, so I'm keeping with that.
There was another one I forgot to check to see who had more wins. Was it Bronson Arroyo or Edinson Volquez? I'm going to guess Arroyo, but I forgot to look, and so we'll just have to scrap that. Unless you want to find it real quick. Either way, hey, 97 wins. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good prediction.
Yeah, I could have swore I actually guessed 100 for some reason, so I'm kind of glad I didn't. Let's see. Arroyo had 12. You keep talking. I'm going to look.
All right. I'll fill time here. So, off the air, David and I kind of had a little mini debate about what to do in center field. Now, a lot of people very unhappy with the play of Drew Stubbs. I could argue that without Drew Stubbs in the outfield, from a defensive standpoint, you're saving yourself some runs, especially you would argue that some of those balls out in San Francisco, I thought he ran down. I don't know if anybody else would have gotten to him. You can't argue his defense. You can't argue his speed. But at the plate, big-time liability. He did have, I believe he had either a hit or two hits in Game 5, Dave. So he, in pressure situations, he still came out and performed, I think. I could be wrong about that stat, by the way. I specifically remember one hit. I don't know if he had two or not, but still, he strikes out an awful lot. Doesn't seem to make contact. But what do they do at center field? Because there is a certain player in the Reds minor league farm system who, 150 stolen bases last year, pretty fast dude, who they moved from shortstop to center field, is out there out in Arizona right now in the fall league, getting some games under his belt at center field. And Billy Hamilton, Dave, what are they going to do there? Well,
first of all, Arroyo had one more win than Edinson Volquez. It was 11-12.
All right.
So there was that. Obviously, Hamilton is the center fielder of the future. I think the earliest we're going to see him is either injury next year or September call-ups. I know you disagree with that. I think they're either going to decide that the Heisey and Stubbs rotation can work for another year, hopefully with more emphasis on Heisey than Stubbs, but we'll see. And then just have Hamilton. But I could also see them, if Ludwig doesn't pick up his option, which I couldn't really blame him. He's probably worth more than $5 million. He had a great season. I could see them going out and getting a one-year fill-in guy in center field. And I don't know who's a free agent. I haven't even looked that that much. I tried to ignore baseball for a couple days after after what happened. So, I if I had to guess, they'll go with Heisey and Stubbs for one more year, and then Hamilton. I think there's no doubt Hamilton's our starting center fielder in 2014.
I'm going to make a bold prediction right here. Are you ready, Dave? I'm going bold. I'm going big. Go big or go home is what they always say. Billy Hamilton will be your starting center fielder in 2013 for the Cincinnati Reds. Write it down. In fact, we don't even have to write it down. We'll just go back to this episode, just like I did for episode 4. But I'm saying Billy Hamilton will be the starting center fielder for the Cincinnati Reds opening day in 2013. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Drew Stubbs moved in the offseason in a trade. That's just my personal take. Maybe they can package him and Heisey and get a left fielder. You never know. I don't know. You're right about Ludwig. I would not be surprised to see him back. You're right. He earned way more than the $5 million is due next year. 26 bombs, over 80 RBIs. Maybe the Reds can work out a deal. I don't know. I hope to see him back because he was huge, especially there in the postseason. But I don't think it. I think Billy Hamilton's your starting outfielder. I really do.
He's going to have to show something in the fall league,
or spring training.
Or spring training. But I just think if they would have switched him to center field, I don't know, halfway through the minor league season, I'd be right there with you. But I mean, I don't know. I never played outfield. I was a big guy. I played first, so I don't know. At that level, you got to look at how you got to learn to read the ball off the bat, and it's a lot about that. And obviously, he has the speed to make up for if he makes a bad read. But I could see it. I'd be a little bit surprised if it was opening day, but he will be in a Reds uniform in 2013. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I'm not going as bold as you, but I think Tony Cingrani is our 5th starter at the beginning of the season next year.
I agree. Now, who does he replace?
He replaces Leak. I don't know what they're going to do with Leak. I don't know. I make Leak a left fielder. I don't know what they're going to do with Leak. So, but,
wow, pull a little Rick Ankiel.
Yeah, there we go. He can hit the ball. He played a little fielding, I'm sure, at some point in his life. So, I think Cingrani's got good stuff. He's a lefty, which it'd be kind of nice to have a lefty in our rotation. Mm-hmm. And I just think they're going to bring him up now, and they got a couple of other young pitchers to bring up after Arroyo, because Arroyo's only got next year on his contract, and then I don't think he'll be a Red anymore. I like the guy, but we just got young pitchers galore down there. So, but I think Tony Cingrani replaces Mike Leake as our 5th starter on the opening day roster.
That is a bold statement right there, Dave. But no, I agree. I could see that happening. There's this little elephant in the room still with Aroldis Chapman, because the Reds clearly don't know what they want to do with him. Is he your closer? Is he a starter? What is it that they're going to do? He can't. We know with the shoulder fatigue and everything else, he can't throw 100 miles per hour every time out. But where do you think the Reds will have Aroldis next year?
I think they're going to leave him at closer, and I think that's the right decision. We talked about this, and we agreed then. I don't know if you're still on this side of the fence, but I just think his stuff is so much better for 1 inning a day, a couple times a week, than hoping for 6 innings every 5 days. I just think it works out better. He's got that closer mentality down. He struggled a little. We were in a lot of close games this year. We had a lot of save situations, so that's why I think it's important. I really think we need to focus on re-signing Broxton if we can. It's nice to have that other guy who's got closer stuff for if Chapman needs a couple extra days off, or we go a bunch of games in a row where we need a closer. But I can't see how they put him in the starting rotation. I just don't think his stuff translates. We've got starting pitchers, and to find a pitcher who has the stuff and has the mentality to close games, you can't just. And people are like, oh, your best pitcher, you've got to make him a starter. Your best, really? Because the Yankees, their best pitcher, never made him a starter, and I'm pretty sure he had a pretty good career.
A little bit.
And he had 1 pitch.
Right.
They're like, oh, he only has 2. Really? Because Mo has one.
Right. What do they do about Madsen? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think he'll ever suit up as a Red?
Unless he's feeling nice and takes a heck of a discount. I did see one thing that they might be looking at a situation where to get out of paying that $2.5 million just to get rid of him on top of the $6 they already paid, which just hurts my soul to say. They could work out another thing where they do another deal like this, where maybe he comes for a lot lower, coming off that surgery next year, and then has an option for 2014. So I'd like to see that. I'd obviously like to see the Reds get something for that decent-sized contract. I'm not banking on it, but honestly, if it comes between signing him and signing Broxton, I'd much rather have Broxton in that pen next year.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising.
Coming off surgery, you don't know what Madsen's going to have ready.
That's true.
And yet, that money's already gone. You can't look at it like, oh, we paid him this month. Well, it's gone. So if we're going to give money to a big righty to set up games, because I still think Chapman's going to be the closer, I'd much rather have Broxton there. And I think we can sign Broxton for maybe 2 or 3 years, which would be nice to have. You got him, Marshall, and Chapman locked up for a couple years at the end of that bullpen.
There's other questions to ask, too. You still got Bill Bray, who probably won't be a Red next year. Nick Massett, a guy that they were really trying hard to get him ready for the postseason run. Unfortunately, the injuries just he couldn't get over them. What do they do about those two guys? Because right now the bullpen is as stacked as it's ever been.
I don't think either one of those guys will be Reds next year. And Massett, I couldn't care less. I'm not going to – but I feel a little bit bad for Bray. I always kind of liked Bill Bray, a nice lefty out of the pen, but he just – I mean, we've got lefties out of the pen. He's not Sean Marshall, and he's not Aroldis Chapman. You got to go with the best – and they're going to get jobs. I mean, they're good pitchers. They'll get major league jobs. But I think we're not going to have Simon – I don't know what Simon's – I don't think we've got him signed past this year. I'm not 100%. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have him because, I mean, you got to look. We got LeCure's pitching lights out. Hoover pitched fantastic. I don't know about what the reliever situation looks like in the minors, but there might be somebody down there ready to come up. If they don't make Sigrani a starter right away, I could see them moving him to the pen, just have another lefty in the pen. So I don't see either one of those guys being Reds, and I wish them all the luck in the world on the rest of their careers, but I just think our pen, everybody that's in our pen currently is better than they are.
Let's move to the position player side of things, and you got Scott Rowland, Miguel Cairo, Valdez, all guys who are up there in age. Let's start with Rowland. What do you think about him?
He's basically said he's retiring. I think it's classy. He's going to wait till after the World Series is kind of the gist everybody's saying, which is nice. I hate when players try to make it all about them while there's still baseball going on. And he's still a big enough name that it would take some headlines away from what was happening on the field. So I like that. I think he'll retire. Unfortunately, he's going to be always known as a Cardinal, which you don't like to hear that for anybody. But he gave us one really good year and some decent years.
He did a little more. Okay, so the results on the field didn't show, but there was stuff in the locker room that he really changed the atmosphere.
Yeah. I'm sure in the locker room he was a stud, and I don't know right away. I don't think he'll go into coaching or anything like that, but I think at some point he'll end up, even if it's at the minor league level or whatever, he might end up coaching.
I really hope. You bring up a great point. I would love if Scott Rowland became like your roving infielder instructor or infield instructor. If they don't have a position, they should do it right now so that he's going around to all. And again, who knows what he wants to do. Maybe he doesn't even want to coach, but I think he would be a really good asset in the Reds organization if they could get him to be a field instructor and really teach those guys the fundamentals of fielding ground balls and playing the infield because I don't know. You could argue that there were some better fielders at third base than him, but he's one of the best.
Yeah, and you can't tell me learning from him didn't help Todd Frazier.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sure if you asked Todd Frazier, he'd say that. I don't think right away he'll go into coaching, but it seems like a lot of players, they're like, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with the game. And then they're out of it for a couple years, and they're like, they get the itch to be back on the field. So I definitely think at some point he'll be a coach. I don't think Cairo's coming back. I don't know if he'll be done or if he'll catch on with another team. Valdez I could see, but I would be a little bit surprised. I think they'll bring Didi up to back up Kozar and back up Phillips, personally, and then unless they decide, because I don't know what they're going to do with all that. I know they're moving Billy Hamilton to center, but I don't know what they're planning to do with. They got 3 players to play on the left side of that infield and only 2 spots. So
right.
I don't think any of the 3 of them will be back either. But if any of them are, I'd say it'd be Valdez.
Yeah, because he could play outfield. He could play infield, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, we saw in Game 5, when they took Stubbs out, when they pinch hit for him, I was like, they already batted Heisey, so who's playing center field? And sure enough, Wilson Valdez goes out there top of the 9th inning. Yeah, these are some tough decisions that the Reds front office are going to have to make. I still hope. Now, I like Brandon Phillips at leadoff, Dave, but I kind of hope that they go out and get a leadoff hitter. And I don't know who's out there. We saw what happened at the trade deadline in July. They apparently were trying to get a leadoff hitter. I hope that they get a bona fide leadoff hitter, because I don't think Brandon Phillips you could hit him anywhere in the lineup, but I think Phillips is better off in the 2 spot. Just my personal opinion. He did a fantastic job batting leadoff for us this year. He did a great job batting cleanup as well when asked to do it. But I don't know. I kind of want them to get a leadoff guy. And again, if Billy Hamilton is our starting center fielder in 2013, he will be the leadoff hitter. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and like you said, you can bat him anywhere. But I feel like his power is being a little wasted in the 1 slot. So I would love for him not to have to lead off. If we could get somebody to hit leadoff. Everybody seems to think Kozart's the answer. I don't think Kozart's going to be a leadoff guy. He's got a lot of pop. I like him a little farther down in the order. If you can get a shortstop with pop, I mean, you can't be angry about that. So I'd love for them to pick up, like I said earlier, maybe a year rental player to lead off and play center field before, because I don't think Hamilton's going to be ready right away. But that would be great if we could move Phillips to 2 and move Kozart to, what would he'd end up being like probably 6 behind Bruce, or 7 behind Frazier. So, yeah, like you said, you can bat Phillips anywhere, but you'd much rather not have him in that 1 slot.
Well, we'd love to hear your thoughts because, there's a lot of decisions that are going to have to be made this offseason. Hit us up via email, podcast@redlegfans.com, and send us your tweets. We're at Redleg Weekly. We're even on Facebook at facebook.com/RedlegFans. And we just got a couple more minutes left here on episode 29 of Redleg Weekly, our last episode of the season. Dave, if there's one, let's go with 2 memories from this season, whether it be through the podcast or the Reds season. What were your 2 best memories of the year?
Oh, you go with best. I was going to say the one that'll stick with me is watching Votto hit that grand slam at home with the ticket from that game in my pocket. That's one I won't forget, but it's not a good memory. I'm trying to think. I truly, there's so many great things this season. I think Latos pitching the clinch game, I think with all the stuff he had to take early in the season, that was a great thing to watch. And getting to do the podcast from the press box at Fifth Third, that was cool. You could see some of the young guys, and first time the podcast was recognized and we got press credentials was kind of cool.
Yeah, I was going to say that was probably one of the highlights of my year is from a Redleg Weekly perspective. Obviously, the clinch game, huge. The cruise in celebration show after the clinch game, by far one of my favorite memories of the year. I know it's a bad memory because we wanted to see the champagne. Obviously Fox Sports doesn't like it either, but still, it's a very funny moment in 2012 as far as the Reds go. Bailey's no-hitter, Votto's 3-homer performance that Dave was not at, Todd Frazier hitting a walk-off home run in the year. Something that I had called on Twitter. I called it, and it was pretty cool. I like that memory. But we've had a lot of awesome guests this year. I'm just trying to, off the top of my head, thank you very much to Matt Andrews, the radio voice of the Louisville Bats, for joining us multiple times on the show this year. Jay Burnham, the voice of the Trenton Thunder and co-host of the Minor League Report here on the SPNT Podcast Network. Thanks to him for stopping by. Jamie Ramsey of the Cincinnati Reds, Assistant Media Relations Director, stopped by the podcast this year. Thank you again, Jamie. Jason Harbison of the Redleg Radio Report in Bowling Green, Kentucky, another awesome guest. And you and I, Dave, have been on their show on Real Radio down in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So big thanks to them for stopping by. Is there anybody that I'm missing?
Christine.
Yes, Christine from the Fox
and Mark Sheldon.
And Mark Sheldon, you're right. Mark Sheldon from MLB.com, beat writer for the Reds. Thank you to them for stopping by the show as well. It's been an awesome season, Dave. I can't believe we've done 29 episodes of this thing.
Yeah, it seems like just yesterday we're like, hey, when should we start coming up on spring training? So it's kind of surreal to think we made it through the first season, and even though it didn't end the way we would have hoped, it was a great season nonetheless.
It was a great season. 97 wins. Had a real great chance at a World Series this year. We just came just a little short, and it was a fun year for the podcast. I'm hoping, stay tuned for further updates, that we'll get a chance to be at Reds Fest, either via the podcast, doing something down there for that, or just as fans going down to see it. I know you'll be there anyway, Dave, but hopefully I'll get a chance to make it down there this year to Reds Fest. I'm really looking forward to it. And who knows, if something warrants, if there's a big news in free agency, if there's a big trade, we'll throw a podcast out there for you guys to listen. And once again, special thanks to everybody who downloaded the show this season. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for all your great feedback and all the reviews on iTunes. If you get a chance, leave one for us there. We certainly appreciate the feedback. And Dave, if I don't talk to you soon, enjoy your off season, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
Sounds like a plan.
And that is going to do it for episode 29 of Redleg Weekly. Don't forget, you can email us at podcast@redlegfans.com and follow us on Twitter @Redleg Weekly. Redleg Weekly is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. For my co-host, Dave Brem, I'm Nick Superling. We'll see you next time, next season, for Redleg Weekly.